Okay, all right. Happy Mother's Day. I'm here. We're going to do a cool stream today. Sorry, I was a little late to get started. I did call my mom. Hope you've all called your mom or went out to lunch with her if you're not living on the other side of the country from your family as I am. Hang on. Kill the loop. Thanks, YouTube. Hi. Happy Mother's Day. Yeah, I know there was an echo. It should be gone now. Welcome, friends. So I was up all night, like I always am. Last night, making a little game show for us to play. We were going to play it today, but I realized it was Mother's Day. And so I was like, you know what? People are going to be out. They're going to be doing stuff. So why don't we play it tomorrow? So we're going to do Winds of Winter Jeopardy tomorrow at the normal Starry Wisdom time, 3 o'clock Pacific time. But today I figured we would just do a chill Mother's Day discussion. We'll talk about motherhood in Westeros. I already got a couple of good suggestions in from everyone, so we can keep it light, keep it friendly. But of course, it's a pretty deep topic that we can get into pretty quick. So yeah, tomorrow is going to be fun. Don't miss it. I will just show you real quick, and I'll put some art up here to fill up the blank space in just a second. We did get a late start today, and then we did have technical issues. But look what I've made, folks. We're going to play a game. We're going to play a Jeopardy game. Look at this. So it's not trivia. Okay? But these are the categories. So these are the first 3 questions in each category, or discussion topics. There's going to be 3 more after. So plots and plans, right? Assassin or general. That's about Arya. Will she be an assassin, or will she be more of a general? So basically what I'll let you guys do in the crowd is pick which ones. And we'll do it Jeopardy style. So you got to go top down. Someone's got to pick assassin or general before we can do lightsabers, etc. And then, we'll go through them. We'll discuss each one with the chat. You'll be able to get your comments in. And then, of course, there's one column for suggested questions. So with super chats, you can add in more. And I've got a whole second wave of topics. And as you can see, they're a little funny. They're a little kitschy. So going to have a real good time tomorrow. That's the preview for that. And today, we're here to talk about motherhood. I did use Rhaenyra's picture because, of course, Rhaenyra's role as a mother is very interesting to discuss, and I figured we definitely would hit that. There she is. There's one of those little strong boys. So, and of course, that's, if we want to, oh, I've got super chats already, but we're, when we get into the Rhaenyra thing, I would like to discuss the idea of motherhood in the royal context and how complicated that is, and with the paternity and the having to hide the names of who the father, this is all stuff that nobody would care about except for you're the princess. So now it's important. But well, let me see here. Let me just adjust the camera. And of course, that is Night's Queen behind me. Eyes of Night's Queen. Oh yeah. Get out of the way, microphone. You're making it less pretty. There we go. Of course, Night's Queen, by the way, a Stark, in my opinion. Marvin Martin, Dany thinks she's infertile. Who's she planning on passing down control of dragons to? You think the dragons are going to be around after the story? Don't think so. Otherwise, her realm and her kids might harm each other. Let me just move my monitor a bit so I don't get it. All right. So guys, I've long thought that we're headed for a no magic kind of ending, where there's not going to be dragons or others around, maybe a dragon egg, maybe a glimmer of magic returning, but I don't really think there'll be dragons with no one to keep them. I don't think that's going to be the issue. But thank you for the super chat, Marvin Martin. Did I get one up here? Thank you for joining Squishers, Theory of Ice and Fire. I think he has a YouTube channel. Right? A Theory of Ice and Fire. Looks like a YouTube channel kind of a name, so check them out. And Cheryl Baxter, Happy Mother's Day. Cheryl, mythical official grandmother of mythical astronomy. Grandmama. Kelly Johnson, when you kill a woman potentially pregnant with your grandchild, you are the worst mother in Westeros. My vote goes to Cersei. So who, this is now turned into a trivia, Kelly Johnson. Who was potentially pregnant with her grandchild that she killed? Who are we talking about there? And Cersei is a character that we want to get into today, for sure. For sure. Oh, you're talking about show Cersei. Oh. Well, I don't remember. Kelly Johnson, I have not rewatched the show since that fateful day 4 years ago. So you have to jog my memory. Marjorie. Oh, Marjorie could have been pregnant. Yeah. Well, I do think a Septa Baylor incident is coming, and yeah, I don't think that would stop Cersei. Knowing that Marge was pregnant with her grandchild, I don't think that would register too much to her. Do you think Nissa Nissa could have had a child with Azor Ahai prior to the sacrifice? Of course. How else would their bloodline be realized in the form of Jon and Dany, if not? So yeah, I would have to say they have a kid. Plus the whole Lightbringer sword insertion thing is obviously a sexual reproduction metaphor. So there's no question Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa had children before. You know, and possibly we're talking about shadow children as well, where Nissa Nissa is killed, she goes into the Weird Net. But of course, it does appear that she becomes Night's Queen, who has the White Shadows for children. Those would be Azor Ahai's children. So their children, there should be people like the Last Hero or somebody is almost certainly, you know, the Danes probably descend from Amethyst Empress. But in fact, that'll put me on something I wanted to talk about. Amethyst Empress. So Azor Ahai almost certainly seems to become Night's King. The parallels really suggest that. Azor Ahai is obviously the Dragon Lord. He's coming from the east. He's coming from ancient Ashai. He's from the Great Empire of the Dawn. His name means fire dragon. As I've shown you, Azor Ahai is cobbled together from a couple of Persian words, Atar, and the Ahi snake, Azi Ahi, Azi Dahaka, all these words that mean fire and dragon and serpent and things like that. And of course, Zoroastrianism, a big influence on Relorism, and that's ancient Persian religion, essentially. So, yeah, Azor Ahai is definitely the dragon. Now, Old Nan always talks about, oh, Night's King was a Stark. Everyone says he might have been a Stark. Maybe he slept in your bed. And it's such a cool idea that it's like, that's got to be true, right? And yeah, I don't sleep much. Forgive my eye bags. I just make YouTube videos all the time. And guys, by the way, I have been shaking off some of my ADHD funk that I was in for a few months. And I've been writing tons of scripts lately. I wrote a cool, you know how I always talk about, and I'll come back to the Azor Ahai Nissa Nissa thing. I always talk about Hammer of the Waters. I love talking about that, right? I did the whole Timeline Heresies stream with the Hammer of the Waters and the Pact and all that stuff. And I got into Moat Catelyn. I'm making a produced video about that stuff. I never have. I did the Nightbringer series all about the moon meteors, and I think I mentioned Hammer of the Waters a little. But I'm starting with just the hammer and being like, what happened? And doing an investigation, kind of like a disaster hunters thing. And then I'm going to Moat Catelyn, looking around, who built this? What happened here? We're going to do Pike and the Iron Islands, Yeen, all the oily black stone. It's going to be like 4 or 5 part series. And I've already written 2 episodes, and it's coming out really good. I'm really excited about it. So that's coming your way pretty soon. And yeah, Timeline Heresies was really popular. So it's pretty fun, honestly. It's a pretty fun way to approach Ice and Fire, especially since George, wrote the story this way. All of the old myths have a little bit of truth in them. They're observations of real events or natural disasters, plus the natural folklore and, color and stuff like that. But they're not just, BS. He's mimicked the way that real humans record natural disasters and world-changing events in their culture into mythology. And so we can approach the myths and the old places like Moat Cailin kind of like a pseudo Graham Hancock or somebody, like a disaster hunter. You know, who built it? Wasn't the first man that built this. It was not aliens, but maybe squishers, quite possibly. The more I look at Moat Cailin, the more I think it's a squisher temple. I will just say that. Kelly Johnson, if Dany's preggers with Jon's child, could an assassination attempt by Cersei that causes a miscarriage be what pushes her over the edge? So, Kelly Johnson, you need to get the idea of Dany being pushed over the edge out of your head. That's something that Dave and Dan made up. It's not something we're going to see in the books. So don't even look for it. It's in the books, you can expect Dany to be constantly wrestling with that idea that she's a cleansing fire and a dragon and how to handle that. There's nothing that's going to push her over the edge into becoming a murderer of innocent people. That won't happen. So, and assassination, yeah, see, we are going to discuss the idea of Dany or Cersei getting pregnant tomorrow. So I will keep that for then. But yeah, I think Cersei is going to be in Casterly Rock. Don't forget about Fagon. I don't know that Cersei and Dany are really going to have a direct conflict. That was, again, something Dave and Dan did. Michael Doyle, thinking how stupid I am for asking Davos, literally has an inner monologue, thinking of sacrificing his wife and mother of his children, and he shudders. Wow, gotta say, you're the pro of helping other learn to read symbolism. Yeah, so I always mention that the Azor Ahai story is given to us in Davos's POV, and he reacts to it immediately by going, wow, I couldn't murder my wife, even if the fate of the world depended on it. And I guess I'm not the stuff of heroes, but we're supposed to realize that actually that is the heroic ideal, is that you won't sacrifice other people, but you will throw yourself into the breach, as Davos does. So yeah. Why do Tyrion, and I'm still coming back to Azor Ahai and Night's Queen, why do Tyrion and Theon want to strangle their sisters? Are they parallel characters? Does Theon want to strangle his sister? I don't recall that. But yeah, who doesn't want to strangle their siblings sometimes? That's valid. The Tyrion thing is, obviously Tyrion and Cersei have a very poisoned relationship. So that is lined with hatred. Ironborn related to the Great Empire of the Dawn. Kelly Johnson, that's going to be a video in the next series. I'm going to deal with that thing exactly, as well as the Lannisters. So, just look for that in a few weeks. That'll be like the third or fourth video in the series. Going to see Mother's Day with the family. Just want to stop by and say hi. We'll be right here for you downtown. The stream will be here for you later. We should talk about Lyanna. That's a good notion. And that brings me back to Night's Queen. So, you guys know the way that we study Ice and Fire is through parallelism, right? The idea that characters are echoing Azor Ahai and Nissa. That's parallelism. We also see parallelism, between, like, say, Bran and Dany. Bran's Weirwood Paste vision experience versus Dany's House of the Undying, Shade of the Evening experience. They parallel very well in many ways. Even the Shadow Tower idea. Sorry, I haven't gotten enough, haven't quite praised Garth enough today. I'm still clearing out the morning cobwebs. It's like 10 a.m. to me. If I was a normal person that woke up at 8 o'clock, then it's like 10:30 for me. I know. I don't move with the rest of y'all. I move with the three-eyed crow. It's like the trees are calling. I can go take a nap and then I'll make more videos. So yeah, archetypes are a big part of parallelism. Terra Incognita. Archetypes are kind of like, the form. It's the Platonic form. Everyone else is paralleling the archetype. And it's by studying all the parallels that we can learn about the archetype. So for Night's Queen, to bring it back, Night's Queen, all of the Night's Queen parallel characters are implied as Starks. Okay, Lyanna is the first one. She is obviously a Stark. Not only is she got the blue winter rose halo, a lunar halo, a frosty winter crown, a cold version of the crown of flowers that, that the May Queen would normally have. She also does the, her son is Jon Snow, who parallels an other, just like Night's Queen. What was I going to say about Lyanna? The Night of the Laughing Tree mimics her giving birth to another, essentially. Where she's becomes from the Night's Queen character, she turns into like a weirwood emanation with no name, faceless. The identity is not known. That's like the others. So she's showing us Night's Queen giving birth to another by becoming one almost. So another, like other Night's Queen parallel figures, Alice Karstark. She's Karstark. She does the whole Winter Queen wedding. Jon looks at her as like Winter's lady at her wedding to Magnar of Then. Jane Poole does a very sad and traumatic version of Night's Queen. All through that Ramsay scene, she's described as being corpse-like and cold. And she's posing as Arya Stark, so she's a pretend Stark. So that's 3 Stark Night Queens. Then we have Morna Whitemask and, of course, more importantly, Val. And Val is not a Stark, but Stannis wants to make her one. Remember, he wanted Jon to marry her and become Jon Stark. She would have become Val Stark. Val Stark. Then we've got Sansa does a ton of Night's Queen stuff in the Eyrie. She's obviously a Stark. Visenya is a Night's Queen figure, not a Stark. Are her features described as stark and stern? Yes, they are. Okay. Visenya is just very Stark-like, and the word is used to describe her. So, feel pretty confident. Night's Queen was a Stark. Don't know if she was Nissa. Lately, it's been trending in that direction. The research seems to show Nissa becoming Night's Queen, but there could be cousins. They're both children of the forest women or something like that. But yeah, they are almost always implied as Stark. So I have to think it is Night's Queen that is the dragon from the east. And it is, or Night's King rather, sorry. Night's King, the dragon from the east, because he was Azor Ahai. And Night's Queen was a Stark. Last Hero is probably a Dane, and that's probably a mix of both. But we'll see. We'll see if we get to find out that answer. Did Garth's blood grant him a great lifespan? I don't think George is thinking that literally about Garth the Green. He's more of a mythical figure. But I think the archetype is one of a green seer, so we would have to say yes. Bran has already eaten his friend to open his green seer gifts. We can assume Bloodraven had to eat some raven's teeth or something to do the same. So yeah, everything is paid for with blood magic. Val is hands down the hottest girl in A Song of Ice and Fire. It's really just Val and Dany. That's the conversation. It ends there. Glad you're feeling excited, though, today, Kelly Johnson. Did you take your mom out for lunch already? Please tell me you did. Will Gilly's baby monster become a White Walker? No, but the White Walkers probably want that baby. For Mom. Mom wants her baby back. So, even though it's Gilly's baby, all the others belong to Night's Queen, kind of. I was going to say a fun game for today would be sort of Mother's Westeros into the categories of Visenya or Rhaenys moms. Oh, is in the Conquerors. Well, I don't know if Rhaenys is really much of a mother archetype. And in fact, there's really a lot of interesting conspiracies to be looked into as far as who is the father of Visenya and Rhaenys' children, which I'd want to go back into because I've got a cool idea about Maegor that I got from actually Minty Maelstrom, the one and only. I was going to say okay, I just read that. So over on Insta, I had a couple cool suggestions for discussion topics vis-a-vis motherhood. Fulia Flowers would have made a great mom. Oh God, why'd you have to bring her up today? Poor girl. And if you want to talk about blood magic, I mean, blood magic, the whole idea of blood magic is that it's predatory, right? You're taking somebody else's life to pay for your own life. George ties that into parenthood and children a lot. So a lot of magicians either give up their ability to have children or they sacrifice their children, intentionally or unintentionally. Of course, Dany, for example, loses her baby but hatches the dragons. And you can get into the whole discussion of how much was she cognizant of what the price would be. It's an interesting debate. But yeah, you see, there was a baby that disappeared so that the dragons could be born. The others are monsters that exist in the place of the children that are given to them. Euron is ready to sacrifice his own children to work magic. And politically, and this is something I wanted to get into, a lot of these royal mothers and parents are putting their children in the line of fire for political reasons. Like, you know, a lot of people picked up on the idea that Corlys and Rhaenys, although they seem really nice and seem more likable, it's kind of disgusting putting their 12-year-old daughter in front of King Viserys, who's like 40-something, you know, which they're only doing for their own political advancement. And here's the poor girl telling Viserys, I can bear you many strong sons. So she's like fucking 14 or something. And that's kind of like, oh, well, that's how it used to be to a certain extent. It's tough. But that's something that, like, we're supposed to notice. I mean, they made it really awkward. They shot that scene very awkwardly, emphasizing the height difference for a reason. So, yeah, all these people that are playing the Game of Thrones, they are putting their children on the board, on the game board as pieces to be moved. And we see horrific costs sometimes because of that. And that's why I say, like, if you can pass up your right to the throne and go be happy, you should do that. So Rhaenyra, for example, should have just renounced her claim and married Harwin. Would have, you know, gone the Prince Duncan of Dragonflies route. That might have been better. And of course, yeah, George does the whole dancing on the strings of those who came before. So why do these people have to put their children into the Game of Thrones or even sacrifice them for magic? It's because they are inheriting an older struggle that they are participating. I'm going to praise Garth real quick. Oh, that's a little better. I gotta get those ice spider webs out. Squishers. Throat squishers. Okay, so like I said, let's keep talking about Rhaenyra since I just broke that open. But let me grab also these questions from Insta that were so good. Here we go. From Fashion Victim, who is in the chat. Get these queued up. App definitely letting me... Oh, here we go. Okay. So, John seems to wonder about his mom a lot. And I saw somebody else ask me about Kat and John. So I think that too much is made of the whole Kat John relationship. I just want to say that from the beginning. It's played up on the TV show, and that's why it is mentioned. We have this whole thing about catelyn. She feels so guilty for how she treated Jon and all this stuff. It's like 2 lines in the books, you know. And the point isn't that catelyn is mean, but just that Jon feels like a bastard. He's, a stepchild. He's not one of the other Stark kids in quite the same way. That's really the point. Not that catelyn is like mean or something. Because if you think about it, Ned put her in a pretty awkward position by bringing Jon home, which nobody ever does, and then just raising him with the other kids. Like, it's very Ned-like, but it's not normally done. And, Cat already had to deal with the fact that they got married, and then Ned went off and supposedly had a bastard before he even, Jon is older than Robb. That's one of the reasons why it's so, like, awkward. So, yeah, obviously, there is some amount of, like, mistreatment there. I want to gloss over it. But some people are like, Jon was abused by catelyn. It's like, no, he wasn't abused. It's not what we read. That's not in the books. He was treated like a stepchild. That's what he was treated, which he was, especially to Catelyn's perspective. Because everything that Catelyn says to Robb about his will and making Jon the heir is very, very real with the Blackfires and all that stuff. So I really cannot hear too much criticism of Catelyn on that front myself. It's pretty understandable what was going on. And they don't give us much detail. It's not something George writes about. It's a line or two that he mentions. It's not something like, oh, Jon has this deep trauma from Catelyn. That's not true. That's not in the books. So, it just was an awkward situation. And the one scene that we get where there's a really hurtful moment between Cat and Jon is, of course, over Bran's deathbed, where Catelyn is completely distraught and beside herself anyway. And it's supposed to be a reflection of where Cat is in the depths of her grief. It's probably not, an everyday kind of occurrence or whatever. So, oh, is Jon younger than Robb? Oh, I think I misstated that. Sorry. I think I misstated that. Yeah, I guess Robb is older. Right, because Robb puts Jon in his will. But still, second oldest is a little uncomfortable. Because if something were to happen to Robb, then Jon would be the oldest. So there. And the fact, of course, he looks like Ned. So it's a little extra. Like, we're supposed to think about how that hurts Catelyn. Because she had to sort of get over the fact that he went and had a bastard right after they got married. And it's like, oh, he's the one that looks like Ned the most. So I think we're just supposed to see it as an uncomfortable situation. Ned's whole family is paying the price for the promise that he made Lyanna, essentially to keep Jon's identity secret. So that's how I would look at it. I think a bigger issue to Jon really was Sansa's treatment of Jon. And again, not to bag on Sansa because she's just a kid trying to figure out her place in her family. But that, I think that is highlighted as a more hurtful moment for Jon when, Sansa figures out that he's not their whole brother. And from then on begins calling him half-brother all the time. So, I think that's something that George wrote about a little more. Let's see here. And I don't think Stoneheart and Jon are going to meet up and have a moment like some people like. I think that's really weird. Both because they're not important to each other in their plots emotionally, and because Stoneheart's not going to be around long enough to travel to the north. I don't think she's leaving that cave too much. She's haunting the Riverlands, and that's about it. Oh, we're going to talk about Stoneheart tomorrow, as far as what's going to happen at Riverrun and all that. Yeah, Kat did kind of luck out getting Ned instead of Brandon. Brandon and Kat wouldn't have been a good match at all. Blackfish is finishing Stoneheart. Kind of think it'll be Arya or one part of the Jaime Brienne thing, but I've got a specific idea about how I think that's going to go, so I'll talk about that tomorrow. Tomorrow, in case you're joining late, tomorrow 3 p.m. Pacific, we're doing Winds of Winter Jeopardy. It's going to be heaps fun. And let me also keep an eye on those PayPals in case someone is sending me a PayPal. That'd be awesome. I would appreciate that. Let me show you something, friends. Get ready. This is my phone. Black screen, fingerprints. This is how it looks. I updated my operating system a couple weeks ago, and when it reset, it turned bright minty green. Fluorescent minty green, if you will. My whole phone looks like this. It's very hard to read. That's with the negative. Normally it looks like this. So, Apple says operating system updates can't break phones. And they are taking no responsibility for it. Even though, by the way, they've been sued in court, held liable for pushing out iPhone updates that break phones. But that's for a different video that I might have to make. If they don't, yeah, that's another story. So, right now, I need to buy a new phone. And, yeah, so if you send me a PayPal, that's what it's going for, and I appreciate it. And I got one from Nefertaria. Thank you, Nefertaria. And let's see here. All right. Okay, so yeah, let's go back to Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra, there's different Rhaenyra's how you talk about Rhaenyra really changes based on what perspective you are taking. So if you're looking at her as queen, meaning her duty is to her people, then you end up judging her at some point pretty harshly for having 3 kids with Harwin that weren't hers. I mean, of course they were hers. That weren't Laenor's. That weren't they weren't who they were supposed to be. They weren't official. And then passing them off as official when everyone could tell they're not. This is one of the main things that eroded her legitimacy of rule and led to the whole war. So politically, it's very irresponsible, not very smart. However, one of the main points about this story is that people aren't robots. And just because you shovel the word duty onto somebody doesn't mean that they stop having love or passions or hates. And we see that with everybody in the story, right? And Rhaenyra is kind of a focal point for that. So when you look at her personal life, it's like you can understand why she had kids with Harwin. She loved Harwin and had to marry somebody else. And the somebody else she had to marry, of course, was gay. He preferred men. And what we saw on the show is what I expected to probably be the truth of the books, where it's like, oh, they tried. But it's, if you're not gay, then imagine trying to sleep with someone that's your same gender because you have to. So it's like it's uncomfortable. It's not, and getting pregnant's hard. You got to try a lot of times. I'm sorry to get all detailed here, but you got to try over and over. So you can see how it would have been hard for them to have true-born children, but they had to keep the marriage because of politics. And meanwhile, she's sleeping with Harwin because that's who she loves, which all the royals do that. They sleep around. And then they have a real marriage. I mean, it's like not even a big deal. It's only a big deal because she's a woman and thus the paternity of her children is in question if she sleeps with somebody else. So it's a really tough situation that she's in when we take Rhaenyra's perspective as a person. And that conflict between like her personal perspective and the overarching political perspective, that is the conflict. That is the grinder that these characters are being put through. And that's where the drama comes from. So I really enjoyed the way that they depicted that on House of the Dragon, and the way that we could We saw both sides of it, really did. Like, they didn't make as big a deal of her children being not legitimate. Like, it wasn't talked about quite as much as in the books, but it was brought up. Like, obviously, Alicent made a bone about it. And then we saw that scene with Lionel and Harwin, where Lionel's telling Harwin, "You're putting yourself and our whole family at risk. You guys could be executed." He made it very clear, like, what the stakes are. So, yeah. They really showed us both sides. They made us feel empathetic for Laenor and Harwin and Rhaenyra, but also didn't just sort of like excuse her political culpability. Like, no, we can see she's helped create this problem. And so did Viserys, obviously, by pushing her into the marriage. Everybody's got a part. Otto Hightower's definitely not innocent, as we know. I believe Targaryen women are the core of Targaryen magic. Rhaenyra is a great example. It makes the conflict and the death of dragons even more tragic. So it sounds, Audrey, and thank you, like you are referring to Preston Jacobs' Dragon Hatcher theory. Dragon Hatcher gene theory. Which I have to say is right on that border of makes sense, but it's hard to prove. It's hard to have the evidence to prove it. I do like that theory. I like the idea of it, and I think it does somewhat hold up as far as if you look at, the bloodlines and who hatches dragons. Why Dany can hatch the dragons again after so long is a running mystery. So Audrey's essentially talking about the idea that it is the female Targaryens who carry the gene, potentially, that allows them to hatch dragons. And so when you go back and look at all the wedding trees, people marrying into the family and stuff, you can see somewhere where like the Targaryen blood is being concentrated or thinned out. And we do know there is something to the Targaryens trying to maintain the percentage of Valerian-ness that's in their bloodlines, and that has something to do with their ability to control dragons. So this is essentially Preston Jacobs' more specific theory about how that works. And I do like it. I think it's a good theory. And of course, yeah, so much is made of Dany's role as the mother of dragons. Like, yeah, the motherhood role is very important with the Targaryens and the dragons. George has played that up and makes it more tragic. Yeah, it kind of does. But that's the thing about House of the Dragon is like, we're supposed to feel sorry for the dragons, and we will. When they start dying, we will. I mean, when Viserion died on the show, it was one of the most sad moments in the whole thing. It really was. It was awful. When I had to make a video about it, I had a hard time rewatching it, honestly. Something about animals dying, it's tough. Even a dragon, it triggers that, like, oh, the poor animal. It's like it's a fucking dragon. It eats people. That's what it does. Still, it was gut-wrenching. So, anyways, it's not just the idea that the dragons are Dany's children and the children of the Targaryens in general. It's like they're showing us the dragon keepers and the dragon pit, and they've got little homes and personalities and stuff. So, yeah, it's going to be tough when the dragons die, either in wins or on the show. Oh, Jesus Christ, dude. I'm going to ban this person. I banned them last week, and they're back with a different username. I really don't appreciate that. Yeah. $10 super chat does not buy you the right to harass the chat with that kind of politics. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, great. That guy again. Yeah. We know they're out there, folks. What can you say? So Rhaenyra, definitely an interesting conflict. Mods, fetch me a block. As far as that thing that she's put in. Brienne and Jaime is on the board for tomorrow. Can you Tell us more about how you think their story will end. I love them. I just want to talk about them all the time. That's legit. That's legit. You know, we should do a chapter reread of their fight in the stream, which is oh so laden with erotic metaphors. George had a good time writing that chapter. I do think we'll see a redux of that fight in Stoneheart's Cave, too. So. Yep, I've got the haircut. It's about yay long. So it's long enough to make a little ponytail. I'm going to keep growing it. I've wanted to do it for a while, so. It was just too hot to keep the stuff on the sides. It doesn't really look too good down yet. It's in an in-between phase for down. So it'll probably be up on the streams for a bit. Oh, God. All right, let's go get... Hang on. I'm going to go get friggin' Pink Bird. I'll be right back, guys. Let me play some funky music. Oh, the fashionable black screen. Sorry, it's blaming that one on Cleo. That's your fault, girl. A dead air time is your fun. Your fault, girl. You better be entertaining now. As you can see, she's a little bit wet from her shower still. All right, like I said, we're going to keep it low key today. Thanks for being chill with a little downtime there. So one thing that I do want to like hit people over the head with, as far as the Rhaenyra thing, and like I'm being half serious, but like some people say it doesn't matter who the father is because they're Targaryens and Rhaenyra's Targaryen. That's not how it works. It's nice that you'd want it to be that way for her, but like I said, we have to simultaneously consider the political reality that she's operating under, as well as the personal human struggle and situation that she's in. And politically, it matters absolutely who the father is. If it didn't matter, they wouldn't have to lie about it. It matters so much that people can be executed if people find out. So yes, it friggin' matters. Like, it's not, you don't get to rewrite the rules of like descendant and stuff like how it works. Like, she's working in a political reality, and politically, it is treason if the children aren't who they're supposed to be. It's the same thing as if they had tried to pass off one of Robert's bastards as Cersei's children. Can't happen. It's the fact that she's the queen, you know, and Cersei is marrying the king. That doesn't matter either. The royal heirs have to be who they're supposed to be, or their legitimacy does not exist legally. And if that happens, anybody can challenge their status, their claim on the throne, which means that anybody can start a war at any time. So it opens up the opportunity for war, rebellion, and that is why it is treason. So that doesn't make Rhaenyra a bad person. It means that she is guilty of treason, and that she is politically, what she's doing is basically insisting that everyone ignore the fact that she has committed treason. And that's like the harshest judgment that you can give on Rhaenyra, is that we can understand how she got into that position, but what she is doing by pressing her claim once the war starts essentially is asking everyone to ignore the fact that her children aren't legitimate. And if she's guilty of treason, she can't be the heir. She can't take the throne, because the throne is a legal status. You can't be the legal monarch when your heirs are not valid heirs. It's just not how it works. So it's very important to realize, like, this is not a story where Alysanne is the bad person and Rhaenyra is the good person. They both are committing similar sins. And really, we should not just isolate Alysanne and Rhaenyra, but look at the entire houses, because all of the mistakes that we can put on Rhaenyra, we can also put on Viserys. And in fact, Viserys gets more of the blame because he created this situation first when Rhaenyra was just a child. And the same thing for Alysanne. She was 14 when her father shoved her in front of the king, the old king in the books, for political advantage. So that's the thing where it's like, you can't be too hard on Alysanne and Rhaenyra. You do have to take a moment to say, yes, Rhaenyra committed treason. Yes, she's covering it up. And in the books, having people's tongues torn out if they speak the truth about it. At the same time, as a child, she's already, being used as a political tool and being shoved into all this. And so it's a very messy, complicated situation. And that's why the writing is so exquisite and subtle and doesn't lend itself to sort of the Twitter style debate where it's just like everybody take a hyperbolic extreme position. Alyson's horrible. Alyson's the best. Rhaenyra, it doesn't matter that who the father was. She has a right to do whatever she wants. Like, no, that's not how it works either. So when we did the blame game with Tony Teflon, we assigned blame for the dance. I picked Viserys first. I think he picked Otto Hightower first. So I do think they get more blame if you're handing it out, but there's plenty of blame to go around with the dance. I like her, but she's spoiled. All these people are spoiled. They're royals. They don't know what it's like to work hard and on the mean streets. Daemon knows what it's like on the streets, but not really, because he's only ever been to the streets as a royal. So even his street smarts, it's not the same as having that blue-collar perspective. So yeah, all these people are spoiled. Singling out the princess to call spoiled is a little... Okay, let's think a little harder. Entitled is the word. Spoiled is a word you use for children. These people are entitled. So, happy Mother's Day. Yeah, and I made a whole video about Rhaenyra and Dany, and before the season, and I told people Rhaenyra is not Dany, so don't get that wrong. That's why Dany is so interesting. Like Egg, she has some amount of experience with what it's like to sleep on the ground. Dany goes a lot farther. Dany's sold. She has no connection to royalty or feather beds or any of that shit. So she's growing up straight up as an orphan who's going to turn into a queen. And that's her arc. That's why I always bring up like Ben-Hur and stuff like that. Like she's a freed slave who leads a rebellion. That's more her character. And there's no way that Rhaenyra could ever have that experience. She grew up in court. It's just different. So that is why Dany is Dany. Yeah, I do think Rhaenyra is a very sympathetic character. I think that's the poeticness of the character. It's like you have to judge her pretty harshly for some stuff, and she remains very sympathetic and compelling. And that's the character. So I won't have her whitewashed, and neither will I have her, overly slandered. To the extent that I regulate that sort of conversation, which I really don't, but whatever. All right, so let me pull up these Instagram points. And you guys can fire away, as obviously we're doing this loose here, so any characters you want to talk about. Somebody said Lyanna. We should come back to Lyanna. Come here, girl. What do you need? You want to be up here? And these are my flowers for Mother's Day, obviously, if you didn't pick that up. Of course, Rhaenyra is entitled. She literally has titles. Right, that's what I was saying. All of these lords are entitled. Like, literally entitled. That's the whole... When we say entitled to describe a person, we're saying you're acting almost as if you were some sort of royalty. That's what we're saying. These people are royalty. This is a rose cockatoo, also known as a galah. So the Aborigines, or first peoples in Australia, they have been calling this bird a galah for like 40,000 years. So we should probably use that word. Yeah, so as far as Viserys and Rhaenyra, in the books, there's a little more of this. It's, we see the Vaemond thing where Vaemond gets killed for speaking the truth. Well, not just for speaking the truth, for speaking the truth the way he did in open court at the time he did or whatever. That's kind of the road. Like, once you go down the road of playing the Game of Thrones, that's what you have to do to keep playing. It requires a price in blood, just like blood magic. Like, that's the thing. All the power in this story is parallel. Political power, magic power, it works the same. So the people like Euron that are sacrificing their children to do magic are just doing a magical version of what the kings and lords are doing by sacrificing their children into the Game of Thrones. Intentional parallel. And I did, to buzz over to Alicent a bit, we actually saw a lot more of Alicent with her children than we did Rhaenyra with her children. And there was some pretty interesting stuff with her and Aegon, and her and Aemond, and then her and, oh man, it's been a while since I watched this series. The girl that has the prophecies. Oh man. Made whole videos about her. Man, ADD's a motherfucker. Names can just disappear. Cleo, you're killing me, dude. This is why I don't take you out during the stream. Helena, thank you. Jesus. A great name, too. I love that one. Helena. Bug Girl, Helena. That's her. Yeah, I do think Rhaenyra comes across as the better mother. She's got some moments with her kids that are a little more... we see her encouraging her kids and stuff like that. It's hard to judge that kind of thing when we're only getting these little vignette scenes on the show. We're not seeing the whole totality of the relationship. But you could definitely see that Aegon was not raised very well. He's a monster in the making. He's an Arion in the making. He's touching the serving girls and, not taking any of his responsibilities seriously. So... yeah, that's definitely on the parents. And you can see the way that she puts pressure on him and yells at him and stuff. That's not a very good relationship. And then you can see, conversely, she has more tender moments with Aemond and Helena that are pretty interesting. But the Aegon Alicent thing is like a really good example of one of those gymnastics moms, the sports parents that push their kids way too hard. That would be the analogy, I guess. Even worse, though, of course, it's gonna be the king. And Aegon's transformation is super well done. The whole I don't want it. Oh, maybe I do want it. when they're cheering for me here. That's going to be interesting to watch. Alicent and Otto and their relationship with Aemond as that goes forward. Dance mom, Allie. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Tara. That's it. That is it. Yes, Helena. Precious soul that she is. We'll see what they do. I've always wondered, Fire and Blood, like the Dance of the Dragons is the darkest shit that Martin has written. And I am wondering if they're going to do every little bit of it or if some of this stuff might be changed. We saw the Rhaenyra thing was changed. You know, he got to run away and have a sort of a happy ending. I liked that change. I thought it made sense for the plot, and it was a nice moment, while still being, you know, messed up. As far as, because they killed a serving man to pose as Rhaenyra's body, so they still murdered somebody, right? But yeah, Blood and Cheese is coming. For those of you who know what that is, a lot of just, I mean, this is a tragic story. This is the most tragic story. It's really just about the collapse and fall of a dynasty and this family tearing itself apart. So we'll see how dark the show gets. I almost think that's why they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're also doing Dunk and Egg. Just in case you, because it's going to get really bad. And it's going to happen in season 2. And a lot of people are going to be like, I don't know about this show. I can't take it. It's too much. So the Dunk and Egg will be a little bit of a different, you know, different palette offering. And of course, if you didn't see, I did a 40-minute Dunk and Egg series preview video that I put out last week. So check that out if you haven't. Went through all 3 Dunk and Egg books, highlighted the main events and characters, made some jokes. Then I went into everything we know about Dunk and Egg after the published novellas and talked about, you know, how that might look on TV and some of the best moments that are coming. So if you didn't see that, definitely check it out. How dark will it get? Really friggin' dark, dude. Really dark. And without the happy notes to make you feel better about it. It's going to be brutal. I was almost surprised when I heard that they were doing this story. I was like, wow, okay. All right. Sorry, just trying to keep Cleo happy here. Yeah. Real dark. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, chat. It's pretty friggin' dark. And like I said, it's going to happen in season 2. It's going to start off. It's going to get worse right away. Yeah, so it's like, imagine if the Red Wedding was a whole war. Okay, so Instagram questions about motherhood. Some Cersei stuff. And I wanted to get into Cersei, obviously. Cersei and Dany are 2 characters that are intentionally contrasted, paralleled in that they're what am I trying to say? Not paralleled as in they're like one-to-one echoes, but they're characters that are meant to be contrasted. And George has even said, if Feast and Dance came out as one book, what they were supposed to be originally, you would have seen Dany and Cersei as ruling queens with their chapters bouncing back and forth, and it would have been he intended for that contrast to happen. He said that. So, what do you think of? Oh, I read that one. Let's see. Can't wait for discussion about Arya's refusal of motherhood, Cersei's excuse of motherhood as the reason she does things, and the influence of being a mother on Catelyn's advisory role to Robb. So Arya's refusal of motherhood, I've not heard that expressed in that way. Arya is being asked to reject her humanity pretty much like across the board. Her Stark identity, her desires, passions, all that. But she's not really, of course. The Faceless Men, as we've said, it's kind of duplicitous. They're kicking all of this detachment rhetoric at her, but they're not really forcing her to do it. And she's obviously not going to completely give up her identity. Yeah, and so I don't know about, as far as her rejection of motherhood. I mean, I think what we're referring to is the whole thing about where it's like Ned is telling her, "Oh yeah, you'll grow up and marry a lord and have children," and she's like, "No, that's not for me. That's for Sansa." But that's more of a life path thing as opposed to motherhood and children. Well, no, I guess that's fair. So I'll answer it this way. As someone who doesn't have kids, and who has consciously at certain moments chosen not to have kids, the reason I made that choice is not because I don't like children or think that I couldn't raise children. I think I would be a good dad, but it takes a lot of time and sacrifice to raise kids. And me being a little bit of a late bloomer in life, I'm sort of just now, in the last 10 years, I'd say, like finding my real stride as far as my life purpose and what I want to do with my life and being fulfilled. And it takes all my time. Like I said, I barely sleep. I'm working on these projects all the time. If I'm not writing, I'm editing videos. And the thought of giving up so much of my time just to raise another small human, I've never been able to wrap my brain around it. Like when it came time to that moment to really consider it and imagine what it would be like, it's like, well, how would this work? And I just, at the various times when I had that choice, I would have had to give up a lot of things and change my life very significantly to have a kid. So I chose not to do that. So what Arya is talking about essentially is that she's seeing the life path of being a mother and, a royal lady, the Sansa life path, as being unfulfilling for her. And what she wants to do is pursue her own desires, which she doesn't even know what they are yet, but she knows it isn't that. It's something more free, something where she can explore and figure out what she wants to be and have power to take vengeance against the people who've wronged her. Eventually, that's what it becomes. What's up there, Grey Waste Tim? And so it is kind of the same choice that I'm talking about. As far as like, are you choosing to spend a lot of your life and energy to bring someone else into the world and to raise them up into an adult? Or are you going to take that time and energy and instead essentially spend it on your own, not yourself, but your own pursuits? Like for me, I'm not just running this YouTube channel, obviously. I'm facilitating a conversation about mythology and symbolism, which I think has real important value, both because mythology is important and because it's personally transformative. It's changed my life. I get the feedback all the time from you guys. These lessons that we're learning from these stories are important. They change us. They cause us to think. They cause us to get to know ourselves better and understand the world better. So I feel happy. I feel like I am making the world a better place actively. I'm not, the next generation of humans won't have one of my kids, but it'll have lots of people that I've helped become better people. Okay. So There is a more selfish version of that, though. So, like the magicians, like Euron, who's willing to sacrifice children for their own magic power. That's the most predatory version. But it's still the same idea of like taking the energy that you could use to raise a child, keeping it, and spending it on something else. So, it's always a trade off because you only have so much energy and time. Sri Lankan living abroad for a while. If possible, I'd like to see a discussion of Rhaenyra, her victimhood, and her resilience, and how motherhood may have helped her or made her situation worse. We don't hardly know anything about Rhaenyra except for her victimhood. Unfortunately. And we're talking about the wife of the Mad Queen and Dany's mother. Basically, all we know is that she was forced to marry Aerys because of that prophecy. They were never affectionate with each other. They were not Targaryen siblings who loved each other like two of Egg's kids did. Two other of Egg's children. I'm sorry, Aerys and Rhaenyra are Egg's kids, but they're two of the other brother and sisters liked each other and went off and married in secret, if you recall. Aerys and Rhaenyra did not. Or no, Aerys and Rhaenyra that's Egg's I'm sorry, that's his grandson. Where's my friggin' Targaryen family tree when I need it? Okay. Yeah, okay. So eggs, here's Egg and Black Betha. So Duncan married Jenny of Oldstones, Jaehaerys and Shera. And Jaehaerys, he would become Jaehaerys the second. Correct, right? Yeah, totally. They are the ones that went off and married in secret. Their kids are Aerys and Rhaenyra. They do not love each other, and yet they are essentially forced to marry each other because the prince was promised is supposed to come from their bloodline. So Rhaenyra is the victim right off the bat, essentially of prophetic necessity. She has to marry her brother, even though they're not tender, and he turns into a psychopath. And of course, she's then raped and abused, and the description of, I mean, it's gut wrenching, right? When Jaime's talking about Gerald Hightower having stood outside the bedchamber, listening to Aerys abusing Rhaenyra and not being able to do anything, and telling Jaime we're not supposed to protect her from him. So it exposes the hollowness of the Kingsguard, and obviously shows you the real monstrous nature of Aerys. True psychopath. So I don't know what else to say about Rhaenyra except for that she's a completely tragic character. But we don't know anything else about her. Because we only see her from the outside, from the view of history. So, God, maybe Dany will have a vision of her mother. Wouldn't that be nice? I mean, Jaime has that moment where he has a dream and he speaks to his mother. So wouldn't that be nice if maybe Dany, instead of only hearing from like Quave and stuff like that, like, God, she could just maybe have a moment with Rhaenyra. That would be her shade. That would be something. We think about Lyanna and Jon a lot too. Yeah, Egg is Dany's great-grandfather. That's correct. Yeah, I guess that's a good point. If Dany ever talks to Jaime might be able to tell her a nice story about Rhaenyra. Barristan could, perhaps. I wonder if Jaime will reflect on that while meeting Dany. Yeah, if Jaime meets Dany, his inner monologue will be very interesting. That's for sure. You know, the thing about Jaime is that, like, he's a pretty good judge of character. He's not the kind of person that would judge somebody for who their parents were. He sees through that kind of stuff. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about Jaime and Dany interacting. That's really interesting. In flight school for the Army, sometimes when I'm flying a helicopter, I imagine it's my dragon. Wish Blackhawks could blow fire. They kind of do, don't they? I listen to your content while studying. Gotta go. Cheers, buddy. Flying helicopters. That's a new one. I usually say, I'll listen to my podcast while you're doing chores. Or flying helicopters, yeah. That's cool. No, you're good. You're good. That's a fine question. Man, I cannot quite clear my throat today. Sorry. I'm trying to get my sleeping schedule a little bit under control. I mean, it's so bad right now. My nap has slipped to like when normal people go to bed, and then I'm up all night, and then I sleep for a few hours, and then the birds wake me up. And it's always a problem for ADHD people. We don't get the normal melatonin, serotonin shit that other people do. And going to bed is hard. And a lot of times the only way that I can get myself tired to go to sleep is by smoking a ton of weed, which leaves you a little congested the next day. So, sorry. I'm just trying to manage it, do my best. Try to always be cheerful when I'm here, even if I'm a little congested. Yeah, and lack of sleep, exactly. Hard on your throat as well. That is correct. I'm trying to bring it back under control. We'll see. I'm anxious to show you what's behind this curtain. I've moved my desk in my home, and I've got a whole new background waiting for you. It's under construction. Lightbringer Studios is behind this curtain. It's like when you're at Macy's and half the store got a big plastic thing. Like, ooh, what's behind there? More displays. Can't wait to see them. Yeah, it'll be cool. There's a whole thing. Cleo, you're killing me, dude. You're killing me. Yeah, see, like, I have tea. I just didn't have time to make it before I went live because I was running late. Because I have ADHD and everything's train wrecked, and I got up late, and the birds and technology, and that's just how it is. That's just how it is. Yeah. No, I don't think Daenerys is the Dane heiress. I know some people do. I do not. She's already part Dane anyways, though, because of Diana Dane. Why does he hate Ned so much? Who? Who hates Ned? No, it's not a green screen. It's a banner. Let's see. Mm-mm. So what other mother characters should we talk about? Let's talk about Lyanna. So Lyanna is an interesting character. She has a child very young, right? She's only 14, 15, I think. I talked about first of all, what we're trying to figure out is like what was the context of Rhaegar and Lyanna's relationship? Was because it's given to us as an abduction. That's what Robert says, and Brandon seemed to have that impression as well. But of course, Ned doesn't think that's the case and doesn't think ill of Rhaegar. And so, we get more and more clues as it's going along that probably there was a romance there. She wept at his harp playing, at his sad song, and he gave her the crown of love and beauty. And so definitely seems like it was more of a romance. But the key to it, I think, is the prophecy angle. And I talked about this in my Aegon's Prophecy series. Rhaegar surely told Lyanna about Aegon's prophecy. He obviously told Elia about all his prophecies and his beliefs about prophecy. We see that in Dany's vision of Elia and Rhaegar, where he's saying, "Oh, there must be one more." His is the song of Ice and Fire. He's the prince that was promised. So, whatever Lyanna and Rhaegar did, they would have done it with the understanding of Rhaegar's prophetic need. And so, the inescapable conclusion is that Lyanna agreed, is that Lyanna put stock in his vision. And the obvious reason for that is because Aegon's prophecy foretells of the others and things that Starks know about. That's why Aegon and Torrhen Stark potentially could have discussed the prophecy when they made their agreement. It's like if you're a Northman and you kind of believe in the distant threat of the others, and a bunch of dragon lords show up and they're like, yeah, we want to use our dragons to fight the others when the time comes. If you believe in the others, you're all about the, like, sure, that sounds good. Fire-breathing monsters. That'd probably be good. Cleo, I love you, girl, but you're killing me. Sorry, I was muted. I'm gonna have to go put Cleo Black. She's in a mood right now. I can't deal with it. 1 second. And we're back. The music is real quiet. Oh, system audio. Oh, I see why. Okay. Thanks. It has been too loud. I think I turned it down too much. Just here to say I appreciate all the work and research you do. There we go. Finally. Man. Sometimes. I wish I could stream later in the day, honestly. Later in my day. It's just not the optimal time. Just here to say I appreciate all the work. Go Lakers. Oh, man, you had to throw that at me. Don't get me started about basketball. Not on today. Not on this day of days. Get me started talking about Ja Morant, James Harden, Klay Thompson. There are some people covering themselves in glory out there. Not lately. All right. I'm not on mute anymore. You must be behind Joe Star. So Lyanna, what I'm thinking about is this moment with Lyanna and Ned at the Tower of Joy, okay? Lyanna is explaining to Ned what the fuck she's been doing with Rhaegar. She's explaining to Ned, yeah, there's this prophecy and the others are coming and we had to have this magical son. Sorry, it was kind of inconvenient. Ned, I think, is skeptical of things. Like when Catelyn is talking to Ned in the Godswood about the others, he's like, the others, that's just old Nan's stories. He's pretty skeptical of that stuff. He doesn't believe the Night's Watchman who's babbling incoherently about the others. He has him executed. So I'm imagining at the Tower of Joy, Ned is probably pretty upset and pissed. He's had to go fight a war. He doesn't understand why Lyanna disappeared. He's probably thinking that Rhaegar abducted her. Then he gets there, kills the King's Guard to get in. Arthur Dane, who he respects, loses all of his companions except for Howland Reed to get up to the top of the tower And she's like, no, I wasn't abducted. We ran away to have a magic baby. Like, Ned probably took that pretty hard. Then Lyanna's like, and you have to raise the baby under a secret identity, even though that's going to bring a ton of heat on you because your best friend Robert would want to kill the kid if you knew who it was, and your wife will hate you for saying that it's your bastard. But I need you to do this for me because you're my brother, and this is my only son, and this is all I have left of my life. And also, he might be the savior of the world. So I think what Ned took away from that is that he probably did not believe the prophecy side of it, because think about where his emotions would be. He would be judging Rhaegar pretty harshly, and Lyanna less harshly, but also like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, Brandon's dead. We just fought this big war, partly because you guys ran off because you think prophecy something. Like, this is probably why Ned is anti-magic and prophecy, is because you're like, yeah, my sister believed in prophecy and she ran off with Rhaegar and started a war and got herself killed. So that's probably why he's like, thinks all that is bullshit and is just wants to hole up in the north and raise a family and not mess with Targaryens and Iron Thrones and all that stuff. So that is how I imagine it went down. And I think that when we find out about the Tower of Joy, it's going to be stuff like that. It's going to be gut-wrenching stuff between Lyanna and Ned. Ned's, not going to really be on board with the prophecy train. Because what Rhaegar did is he had his whole circle going on that. Like Arthur Dayne, Ashara Dayne, Elia, they all were in on Rhaegar's beliefs about prophecy. It seems clear. We know Elia was. Arthur and Lyanna probably were too. Else why is Arthur standing outside the Tower of Joy guarding Jon with his life? So, yeah. When you realize your family member is a conspiracy theorist. Exactly. That's exactly the feeling that Ned probably had. Except for that he's wrong. Right? That the conspiracy is real. The conspiracy of the others. But you see how emotional. You see how the Tower of Joy is going to be this moment when the personal price of prophecy and politics, sorry for all the alliteration, is forefront with the characters. Lyanna and Ned are paying the price for political and prophetic necessity, essentially, as are many characters in the story. Do I like the new cast members? I've been a fan of Freddie for a while. I do, from what I can tell. I watched Raised by Wolves, so I'm a big fan of Abu Bakr Salim and think he'll be great. And, okay, so the whole Laenor, Adam, Valerian stuff, I'm going to talk about that. We're going to do a stream to talk about that. So I saw a couple of people ask about that. I know that's a hot topic. We're going to do a stream about that. So we'll get there. I guess you could call Robert a creep. He's more of like a hedonist or a glutton, or both. He just lacks impulse control, Might have been not that big a deal if he wasn't the king. But, yeah, that's the character. The whole thing about Garth the Green, and not Garth the Green, but the Green Man, Cernunnos, all that idea, is like, it represents nature, yeah, but there's also a specific male aspect to it. Like the stag represents untamable male energy. Like a stag is not, it's a wild animal. It's a very wild animal. So the idea of the stag energy is that there is a wicked side to it. Like you think of Pan, how Pan is kind of wicked. Or even like Zeus, the way Zeus is constantly raping women and impregnating women and turning into animals to trick women to get pregnant. This is like kind of a warning about the unchecked male aspect. Like the Garth the Green figure can become a glutton. It can become an incarnation of indulgence, unchecked desires and self-gratification. That's like the stag energy if it's unfocused. It's an important part of the mythology. Like it goes either way. And when the stag energy is channeled, then you get a powerful leader, a strong father, role model, general, pillar of the community, whatever you want to call it. It's the good part of the male energy. And of course, more modern understanding is that, of course, everybody has a mix of what we traditionally call male and female energy. We say, oh, the man has a feminine side, etc., etc. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about. So when I say male energy, don't think about that as actually an overly gendered way, but as opposed to like a set of attributes that we identify with. It's, I don't know, gender's a construct, whatever. But the point is that Robert represents the bad stag energy. When he's young, he's showing you the warrior side of it. All right? But then as he goes on, he doesn't have a place to put that vigor. And so he turns to self-indulgence and becomes a glutton. And that's why a summer without end will be just as bad as a second long night. Great point. Great parallel. Everything in balance. There's a time for eating up, and there's a time for tightening the reins and storing up things for tomorrow. Everybody goes through those phases. Everybody knows that. So, yeah, that's a good parallel. What are you talking about? The peaks, Grey Waste Tim? Those damnable peaks involved in every uprising. Gormy got what was coming to him, didn't he? Bloodraven said it straight. Robert romances the past and Ned is haunted by it. Very true. Yeah, Robert also abuses Cersei. That is true. Definitely. He does. What do you think about the first Rhaenyra? Oh, right. Let's see. I'm doomed to always come too late shows that she wanted to change things with Arya but couldn't. Yeah, she is a fascinating character. Her life spans multiple sort of time periods of events. I should probably do a whole video about her. Every time I mention her as an aside, I get into like, oh, her life is so cool, and this and that happened, and she did this. So yeah, she deserves a whole video. She's an incredible character, and definitely one of those characters that you can say, oh, Dany's got a little bit of her in her. You know, it's a little bit of an echo there. I'm writing a paper for a grad course on Rhaenyra. Yeah, there's enough meat on the bones there, for sure. That's awesome. Yeah, like I said, I really need to do reread her whole life comprehensively and write up an outline for that. That would be a good discussion. Tim's talking about his voices he's got ready. Oh, you got your Gorman Peak ready. Good, good. Rhaenyra for best World of Ice and Fire lesbian. Yeah, probably. Yeah, she's pretty fucking cool. Her girlfriend is, of course, Alyssa Farman, who sails around the world to a shy. So that's an awesome couple, honestly. Even though Alyssa Farman kind of steals dragon eggs from Rhaenyra and lies to her. It's a tragic romance. Catelyn tries to be a tough matriarch, but kind of does it wrong. Well, you could certainly say it goes wrong. She's a very tragic character. And she's defined by that. Her sorrow and her pain of losing her children. Yeah, she's showing us the pain that mothers feel in this story. So much of it, like what Catelyn deals with, is an example of what many women would deal with in that story. Which is another reason why kind of like just sitting around and criticizing Cat misses the point of her character a little bit. Even though, yes, she does make some wrong choices. I think that where she arrests Tyrion is a really well written scene in that it's understandable why she does it. And the way that it comes together makes a ton of sense. Nevertheless, it turns out to be a horrible decision. She couldn't have known that at the time. So that's how life goes sometimes. Succession, I'm not watching now. Yeah, Stoneheart as a vengeful mother is a really interesting character as well. And maybe we should compare that to Dany's sort of cleansing fire nature. There is a side of Dany that is terrible. She's the mother of dragons. Somebody's got to burn them slavers, though. You know what I mean? Like, you can't negotiate with slavers. Somebody's got to burn them. Otherwise, they're just going to keep enslaving people. And that's Dany. So, there's a lot of cleansing that needs firing. You know, there's a lot of rot that needs to be burned away. And catelyn is kind of in that similar role. She is a vengeful mother. She is a hand of justice. It's not always perfectly just. It's a little over the top. She likes to hang people. But it's kind of like she's embodying when nature fights back, right? Like, we think about that a lot in our modern lives, our relationship with the earth, how much we take, how much we are polluting, and, you know, the destabilization of the climate, which comes back as hurricanes and storms and things that are violent for us, right? And obviously the others, in a certain extent, represent climate change. They represent the idea of the seasons getting out of hand as a price to pay for the meddling of mankind. Something humans did cause the long night. So yeah, nature is red in tooth and claw. And mothers can be the most vicious fighters there are. You know, the mother fighting for her cub is not the animal you want to take on, right? That's somebody that's going to fight to the last. So I think that's something you can see with catelyn. It's definitely a dark version of the figure, but it is nevertheless a mother's fury and rage that is coming back around at all the wrongs she's felt. So yeah, there's a holy rage and terror to Stoneheart. And that is some of the why she's so horrifying. It's a very disturbing character. Is there any hint of the mother of the seven spirit being inside catelyn or Stoneheart? Now, I don't think the faith of the seven have spirits. Those are archetypes. Catelyn is very much that archetype come to life, though. She's showing us one side of the mother. Like, the mother can be as terrible as the warrior. Like, I think the Septon even says that to Cat, or maybe it's Septon Maribald who says it. Yeah, there is something of the stranger in Stoneheart, absolutely. And that's interesting. Like, all the archetypes of the faith are tied together. They're all linked. And Maribald explains that beautifully. And so, yeah, when the wrathful mother is kind of tapping into the stranger a bit. And catelyn is both. Stoneheart is both. Yeah. And we, of course, yeah, Kali is a good one to mention here. We got into some of that when I did my Dany Vedic, oh God, what did I call it? Vedic Indian origins of Dany and Drogon. Yes, a lot of Dany, the whole cleansing fire idea comes from Kali mythology. Kali is probably my favorite goddess form, if you want to say that. Just because I relate to the idea of creation from chaos. Kali is known more for the violence and the vengeance, because that's what her iconography shows you. It's very eye-catching. disturbing. But she, it's really chaos that she embodies and all the different principles of it. That's why she exists before and after time. And her and Shiva together create reality. So there is a creative aspect too. It's not all destruction. She represents those sort of cycles of time and change. And that's why it involves both creation and destruction. And me as an artist and a creator who pulls things from the void and puts them into the real world, I identify with that Kali Shiva action of dredging things from the unknown. One of the best ways to understand the void is as a potential for things to exist. So any artist is doing an act of, mother, what am I saying? Birthing an idea and birthing a child. There are parallels. There certainly are. It's an act of creation. So. I guess you could say I chose creating ideas instead of creating children. Not that those are always exclusive. They're not, of course. Whew. All right, let's see. How long we've been going? It's not my plan to go super long today. I need to get back to having Schadenfreude about John Morant here. It's only an hour and a half. We're an hour and a half in. All right, so what mothering dynamic? Okay, so there was some we didn't do yet from this comment. Woo. So go back to Cersei. Yes, Cersei's excuse of motherhood as the reason she does things. And even Ned and Catelyn see it. Like they see, Catelyn sees it in the Sept, Ned sees it in the garden. It's like, why did Cersei and Jaime throw Bran from the tower? Well, because they're playing the Game of Thrones and they're protecting their own children. And Catelyn even wonders, would I do that for my kids? Right? So it's not meant to let Cersei off the hook, but it is meant to, again, give us insight to that conflict that all these High Lords place themselves in by playing the Game of Thrones. So now in the fandom, I think, is where this happens more. That, people take that line of thought and maybe go too far with it and say, oh, well, she's just fighting for her cubs like everyone else, But the Lannisters lack honor, and they really, like, the Red Wedding is very dishonorable. Cersei's torturing people, and I mean the whole throwing false accusations at Marjorie and trying to cover up her own stuff, and the kettle black routine. I mean, some pretty bad stuff going on. Would Cersei sacrifice herself for her children? That is a great question, Emil. And I think the answer is no. Yes, there's a lot of what appears to be narcissism with Cersei. And I think that's a good way to understand her love for her children. It is inside the context of her own self-identity and image that she loves her children. And it's really insightful, the scene she has with Tommen, where after Joffrey's dead, and she's looking at Tommen, and she's kind of browbeating him about sitting up straight and wearing his crown and all this stuff. And she's just like, Joffrey wouldn't have done that. And so it's like you almost see, like, Joffrey's monstrous nature. That's Cersei had a lot to do with that. And she sees it almost as a kind of strength. She sees rage and abusive qualities as like power and wrath, that people are afraid of. And so Yeah, Cersei is definitely someone who would believe in governing through fear and terror. Yeah, the Tywin apologists. They're the worst. I have only a superficial understanding of the story, so I think Tywin is a good strategist. It's like, why don't we look at how he does? He gets outwitted by a 15-year-old boy at every turn and only wins because of, what's his name? Edmure Tully's bungle that allows him to escape back to King's Landing. So, yeah. And also, all of Tywin's abusive, like, the way that he drives his children so hard comes back to bite him because none of his children share his vision and one of them kills him. So, Tywin, a failure on every level. Not a military genius, not a political genius, completely dishonorable, terrible parent, and going to be responsible for the collapse of his house. So, Tywin may be the biggest failure in the story, actually. Maybe that's the video I should make. The biggest failure, ? Tywin. Thanks, Greyways Tim. You're on it, buddy. Appreciate it. Head, fetch me a block. That's it. Mods, fetch me a block. God loves life. Indeed. Everyone, I love life. God is love. Actually, the God is love is a really deep concept if you ever are in the right headspace to meditate on it. That's a deep one. Shout out to anyone in the chat who's ever taken that one to its whole conclusion when you think about that. I think when you experience moments of incredible love, you can sort of understand how that is true. It's kind of like archetypes. In fact, let's talk about this. Since we mentioned archetypes, I think a good way to think about the archetype of not God, but like divine, the essence of divinity, love is basically at the center of that. There's nothing more pure or divine than love. I think that is true. A lot of people have said some version of that. I think that is true. In my experience of life, I think that is when you feel the most in touch with what you might call the divine, is when you are experiencing some form of love. And love usually is an experience. It's not one, it's shared between people. So, yeah, it's a real truth. One thing I believe in, and of course I talk about my experience. $2 more going to Planned Parenthood. Nice, Carl Carsnark. Love it. Love it. I talk about my Christian upbringing all the time and my sort of approach to mythology and world religion. And it's all about comparative religion and comparative mythology. When you look at this stuff, when you get outside your own upbringing and you compare the religious philosophy of the different cultures, you see how much in common there is, how much overlap, how much of this actually is just universal wisdom that people have stumbled upon thousands of years and thousands of miles apart. Because there's something about our shared human experience that's all the same, right? So what I encourage people to do is never to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like, yeah, if you were raised hardcore Christian or Muslim or Jewish or something else, there comes a point at which you might back away from the more literal interpretation or practice of your religion. And it's important not to, when you're sorting out the philosophy and the dogma, it's important to get rid of the dogma and keep the truth. There's a lot of good philosophy and truth in every religion. So however you were raised, like don't just throw those lessons out. Those lessons are good. And a lot of times it's just easier to use the sort of parables and language of the religious culture you were raised in because that's what you're familiar with. But it's important to realize the concepts are universal. And that's when dogma becomes silly. When you realize that the truth is universal and the experience is universal, arguing about the specific religions becomes just kind of dumb. So, yeah, there you go. So God is love that's one of the things that it's come back around from my religious upbringing that it's like, wow, that's a really deep concept actually to reflect on. Sorry to get off track, but it's Mother's Day, so a little reflection on the nature of love is not off topic, I would say. But yeah, what other mother characters we want to kick around before I get on out of here? Yeah, being told there is no God, that's again approaching everything in a literal sort of materialist concept when religious writings and philosophies are never written that way. The goal of all religious teaching and practice is personal transformation. Through transforming yourself, you transform the world around you, right? Okay. So, yeah, it's all about the effect that reflecting on religious teachings has on the people. So, yeah, getting like it's not important if Jonah was actually swallowed by a whale. It's the lesson of the story that can help us or not. Um, and in fact, it's not whale. The word in the Bible is real big fish. Da, 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 da. Yeah, so could have been a shark. Megalodon. Isn't there a Megalodon movie right now? There is. What about Nana Vagar? We don't know if she was a mom. We don't know if Vagar laid eggs, actually. We do not know. Oh, I know. I know what we should talk about. Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. I was like, real big fish. I can't even remember the song. It was Sell Out. That's what I was trying to bop to. Thank you, Tim. Did we talk about Arya acting as mom in Clash of Kings? Ah, with the girl who didn't talk, who lost her mom. That's a good observation. You're right. And that's a good point is that mothering, and this is why I say feminine and masculine energy, everybody's got a mix, right? Mothering energy is something anybody can have. I have mothering energy. I'm a caretaker. I take care of people. I'm very tender. Anybody that's within my sphere of care is going to feel cared for. You could call that mothering energy. Yeah, and she does it for Weasel. Arya does do that for Weasel. You're totally right. She looks out for her. She struggles with it, like she's kind of mean to her a couple times. But in the end, she basically does. She takes care of her when she doesn't have anyone to take care of. So, yeah, it's that's the thing about it's kind of one of those orphans that like you think about the was it Oliver Twist or just stories about Annie. I think kids being raised in orphanages. Yeah, they kind of have to look out for each other sometimes. I mother the hell out of those birds. Yeah, I something. I have to. You feel like I use my dad voice a lot with the birds. But it's uh, Ilaria Sand is the character I want to talk about. She gives the speech of speeches when it comes to motherhood. So let me see if I can quickly call that up. It's in Feast, and they're talking over Gregor's skull. How do I word search that, guys? What's the phrase that's going to pull that passage up? It's like the speech, along with Septon Maribold's speech. I feel like it's one of the best speeches in the books. Um, I'll try skull grinned. That's all I can remember is that damn skull in that scene while she's talking. Nope. That didn't do it. Um, Maybe if I just put in Elia, it'll come up. think that's the chapter, but I'm sorry. It's I don't know if someone can help me find it, but it is something about warming your bed. No. Shoot. Okay. Well, I won't. I'll just have to encapsulate it. Hopefully, you guys remember the quote. Basically, the sand snakes are sitting there. Then, like, oh, it's a good start. Ah, that'll find it. They're saying Gregor's skull. It's a good beginning, or it's a good start. And she's just like, really? Like, how far is this gonna go? So we gotta avenge. Who's gonna avenge your death, and then. Just like it goes on and on. It's just talking about the cycles of violence. No, that's not pulling it up. Whatever. It's gut wrenching, and it's interesting coming from her because she's not born into royalty. She's Oberyn's paramour, so she is. You don't know her background exactly, but it's something less than royalty. Maybe not a street urchin. Probably from a decent family or something in Dorne to be Oberyn's paramour, but who knows? She's definitely got a different perspective. And so her children are a little more entitled, and they're all lusting for blood. They want to bathe in Lannister blood, Obara says. And they're mad about events that happened either before they were born or when they were children. They don't even remember, but they're carrying on this grudge. It's in the Watcher, yeah. Dance chapter 38. Okay, that's cool. Ripe for what? To make more skulls. That's what I needed. Thank you. George's language is so eloquent. It's often hard to word search. Because you think you remember the phrase and you type it in, and it's actually a little more like eloquent than what your brain boiled it down to. I need to pull it up in Kindle. We're going to read it now since it's Mother's Day. I think it's worth reading. I had it in Search of Ice and Fire, but that only gives you like 2 paragraphs. Where are we at here? Hey, Squisher King. Yeah, I just shaved the sides. The top is as long as it ever was. I just cut the sides off. Because it was hella hot. All right. Here we go. Let's read. Obara gave the skull a mocking kiss. This is a start, I'll grant. A start? Said Ellaria Sand, incredulous. Gods forbid. I would it were a finish. Tywin Lannister is dead. So are Robert Baratheon, Amory Lorch, and now Gregor Clegane, all those who had a hand in murdering Elia and her children. Even Joffrey, who was not yet born when Elia died. I saw the boy perish with mine own eyes, clawing at his throat as he tried to draw breath. Who else is there to kill? Do Myrcella and Tommen need to die so the shades of Rhaenys and Aegon can be at rest? Where does it end? It ends in blood as it began, said Lady Nym. It ends when Casterly Rock is cracked open so the sun can shine on the maggots and the worms within. It ends with the utter ruin of Tywin Lannister and all his works. Okay, so this is like something a kid would say. This is like a tweet right here. It's like, it's completely detached from reality. It's not, and yeah, I'm a fellow West Coaster, absolutely. I'm a hella West Coaster. This is just a statement of emotion. It's not a plan. It's not a coherent objective. Casterly Rock is cracked open? What does that even mean? She wants to lead the entire Dornish army into the Westerlands and kill every Lannister? Genocide the Lannisters? That's not a real plan. That's an emotional statement. The man died at the hands of his own son, Ellaria snapped back. Speaking of Tywin, what more could you wish? And yeah, the utter ruin of Tywin Lannister, like I said, Tywin Lannister is working on that. Just stand back and watch the party. And that's what Ellaria is saying. Like, the man died at the hands of his own son. What more could you wish? I could wish he died at my hand. Lady Nym settled in a chair, her long black braid falling across one shoulder to her lap. She had her father's widow's peak. Beneath it, her eyes were as large and lustrous. Her wine-red lips curled into a silken smile. If he had, his dying would have not gone so easy. Sir Gregor does look lonely, said Tyene, in her sweet Septa's voice. He would like some company, I'm certain. Ellaria's cheeks were wet with tears, her dark eyes shining. Even weeping, she has a strength in her, the captain thought. Oberyn wanted vengeance for Elia. Now the three of you want vengeance for him. I have 4 daughters, I remind you. Your sisters. My Elia is 14, almost a woman. Obella is 12, on the brink of maidenhood. They worship you, as Doria and Loreza worship them. If you must die, must El and Obella seek vengeance for you? Then Doria and Lori for them? Is that how it goes? Round and round forever? I ask again, where does it end? Ellaria Sand laid her hand on the mountain's head. I saw your father die. Here is his killer. Can I take this skull to bed with me? To give me comfort in the night? Will it make me laugh, write me songs, care for me when I'm old and sick? So, there you go. And then they ask, what would you have us do, my lady? Asked Lady Nym. Shall we lay down our spears and smile and forget all the wrongs that have been done to us? And Ibarra says, war will come, whether we wish it or not. Our enemies are in disarray. The time is ripe. And Ellaria says, ripe for what? To make more skulls? Ellaria turned to the prince. They will not see. I can hear no more of this. So, yeah. It tells you how wrong they got Ellaria in the show, right? In the show, she kills Oberyn. Which doesn't make any sense. As if Dorne is just going to be like, yeah, the Martells are been dispatched by a Dornish bastard woman that was his paramour. That's cool. She's in charge now. It's one of the dumbest. That was when you really knew that, like, Dave and Dan are amateurs. Like, they're not even good writers. They're not competent writers. This is like just, they didn't think it through or they didn't care. I mean, it doesn't make any sense for Ellaria Sand to kill Oberyn or to kill Doran. And then just, not Oberyn, Doran. And then be like, yeah, I'm in charge now. I was Oberyn's paramour. I'm guilty of regicide. Do what I say. I have no power base at all, but just do what I say. Anyway, setting that aside, there are still people that defend the show. I don't know what to say. There's intelligent people out there that defend the show's writing. I don't know. It's not just that it was different from the books. It was just bad. Anyway, Ellaria Sand. This is telling you a lot about the themes of the story here. The cycles of violence. Tyrion talks about dancing on the puppet strings of the parents and all that. Well, the dance is war. The dance is the Game of Thrones. They're not just dancing, they're killing. They're taking lives. They're putting their children at risk. They're doing all that stuff. Ellaria's weeping the mother's tears here. She is, this is the thing about archetypes. Ellaria Sand is the embodiment of the mother archetype here. She is speaking for all mothers. She is speaking a generic truth which applies across the board in the story. Talking about the cycles of violence and revenge. It's such a big theme of the story. Remember, we always talk about reconciliation? That's the answer. It's like, what would you have me do? Lay down my spears? Yes. Yes. And go make peace with Tommen. Because Tommen doesn't hate you. Tommen isn't Cersei. Tommen isn't Tywin. And if Tommen's not good, then try again. Like, reconciliation takes work, but it's the only way that we're not at war. So yeah, it's everything. We're going to need to reconcile the wildlings, the others, Stark and Lannister, all of it. That's the only answer. Otherwise, it's just repeating cycles of violence. The others will come again if we don't fix the problem. Two hacks that con their way into the Song of Ice and Fire IP. Yeah, I mean, they obviously have certain skills and intelligence and competency. They got the job. They brought a lot of good seasons to air. They, as showrunners, it seems they were good. But as writers and creative storytellers, that's where they struggle. So the others are snowy Dornish. Yeah, there's a bit, kind of. Yeah, I mean, the Fremen have blue eyes, so think about it. Think about it. Cool. I'm going to take last call for questions probably and then head out of here because I need to rest up for tomorrow's big game show. In case you missed it. Ice and Fire Jeopardy, or Winds of Winter Jeopardy tomorrow. It's going to be lots of fun. 3 p.m. Pacific time. Be there or miss it. On the rewatch, it'll still be good though. It'll just be tons of wins discussion. Did I talk about Sansa? No, thank you. We should talk about Sansa. In the spirit of archetypes, actually. Sansa embodies the archetype of the mother quite a lot. She does it with Sweet Robin. Most notably, she does it with Sandor, a man who is older than her and is in a position of, well, it's complicated. Sandor sticks up for Sansa, obviously, when she's being abused by Joffrey. But he's also come up to that room, kind of, sort of, to rape her, possibly. Or coerce her, or however you want to say it. Seems like Sandor maybe doesn't know exactly what he's planning on doing, but he's planning on something. He's talking about taking that song, you know, I mean, it's thinly veiled metaphor there. So Sansa instead is able to use the energy of the mother, and literally she sings the song about the mother full of mercy, gentling rage and stuff. She literally does that. And Sandor, of course, is a big wounded kid walking around. He was abused by his brother, and then nobody stood up for him, and no one believed him. And his parents didn't, and then Gregor eventually murdered his parents. And Gregor essentially is this monster who abused Sandor, and no one's ever held Gregor to account for it. So Sandor's walking around with this really big wound. He is in many ways still a 6-year-old boy who got his face shoved into the brazier by his brother, and then no one acknowledged it. He's still in that place. So when Sansa wipes away his tear on his burned cheek, it's like nobody's probably ever touched his face like that in years. And that's the kind of thing that can make someone break down. So it is an incredibly powerful moment. And it's an example of the power of archetypes. Sansa is able to draw upon the idea of the mother and focus that energy in that moment and bring that out in herself. And it's an incredible moment. I don't know about shipping them. It is a Beauty and the Beast thing. Shipping is kind of weird. There is a romantic tension there. Whatever. I'm not really into the prosecuting people for thinking about romantic relationships with fictional characters that are under 18. Like, it's part of the story. It's all right. Nobody's actually being harmed. But yeah, it's weird. There's a romantic tension there, even though there's a power imbalance. But I think the most interesting thing is just what I talked about, the way that Sansa transforms into a mothering character and is able to address Sandor's pain. And I think that's what changed Sandor a bit. as far as his attitude towards Arya and Sansa, the way that he protects Arya. I think some of that comes from Sansa in this moment. And I really do think it would be cool if Sandor ended up like the sworn sword for Sansa by the end. It's a little wish fulfilling, but I think that would be dope. Because he's a guard dog. And he talks about what dogs do to wolves. So if he ended up being the guard dog for a wolf queen, like, I just think that'd be cool. I don't think that'd be too cutesy. I think that could make sense. So, Sansa is kind to everyone. That's the thing about her. She's even kind to the Kingsguard. Like, she's kind to everybody. She has a lot of good qualities. The ship is called San, by the way. Right, he's a hound. Sansa lost her wolf. Right, you see how it's kind of works. You can see how the little bird thing could turn into... Well, it's already a term of endearment, so... Get her a dog, she'll be better for it. Yeah, there's your foreshadowing. Ah, poor Cleo. Karsnark, I could use a little help tomorrow as far as keeping track of a couple things. So if you want to have a Google Doc open and ready, I will draw upon you a little bit. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up there. Thank you very much. I appreciate coming out and sharing Mother's Day with me here. It's been a fun little discussion. Like I said, definitely come out tomorrow for Winds of Winter Jeopardy, and. Yeah, so she's Belle with successive beasts. Yeah, Tyrion is also a beastly figure. But her and Jon are not going to be a thing. Apologies. That's purely a show invention. It didn't make any sense. All right. Love y'all. Happy Mother's Day. Love you, moms. Shout out to y'all. And I will see you tomorrow. Cheers.